Coming up on this week's show, we wrap up Pride Month with a visit to Sacramento's Lavender Library. Plus, we review some children's and YA books.
Welcome to the Big Gay Fiction Podcast, the show for readers and writers of gay romance fiction. If you can read it, write it, watch it, or listen to it, these two guys are going to talk about it. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Adams and Will Knaus.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 142 of the Big Gay Fiction Podcast.
I'm Jeff from JeffAdamsWrites.com.
And I'm Will from WillKnaus.com. This episode of the show is brought to you in part by our remarkable group of supporters on Patreon. We'll have more information on how you can join them in just a few moments. Welcome back. I hope everyone listening to my voice currently, whether it's in your ears or in your car or wherever you listen to podcasts, I hope you all had a fantastic week and got lots of great books read. Mm-hmm. Jeff?
For many folks, this was the big Pride weekend. New York, of course, had their big Pride on Sunday. And if your Pride was this weekend, we hope you had a fabulous one.
We want to wish a special birthday to the one and only Jeff Adams. Today is his birthday. Yes, it's your birthday.
I hope that's not a version of the song we have to pay royalties on.
No, it isn't. Happy birthday, sir.
Thank you.
You are officially at the mid-century mark.
I am. And some days I feel like it, too. Yeah. Usually, though, I feel like I'm only in my 40s still. So, yes. Thank you for the birthday wishes.
You're welcome. Is there any aged wisdom you wish to impart to either me or our listeners?
Oh, jeez. That's called putting me on the spot. That is not on the run sheet in front of us.
Stay in school. Don't do drugs. See, that's, that was easy.
Be out there and be yourself.
Happy Pride.
Yeah, happy Pride. I'll just turn my birthday message into a Pride message at the same time.
Okay, moving on.
We're very excited for some stuff happening next year because we're already planning for 2019.
Mm-hmm.
We're excited to announce that we are a featured blogger for the Coastal Magic Convention coming up February 28th through March 3rd in Daytona Beach. It'll be nice to get away to the beach in the middle of February.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly for the folks who maybe live on the East Coast and in places where it can really be snowy and cold. We've looked at this convention for several years,
and we've it's always been at the top of our list, our wish list.
Yeah, and we're finally excited to be able to get there. For those who don't know, it's an urban fantasy paranormal romance weekend hanging out on the beach. Lots of authors, lots of readers, and it should be a whole lot of fun. We'll be featuring some Coastal Magic authors coming up over the next few months leading into the convention, and we'll have in the next couple of weeks, in middle July, we'll actually have the convention director here to talk to us. It's going to be exciting to hear what Jennifer's got in store for everybody for 2019. And if you want to get more information about Coastal Magic, there will be the link, of course, in the show notes, or you can go directly to coastalmagicconvention.com.
The Codename Winger series celebrates Pride Month with a limited time sale. Throughout the month of June, the first book, Tracker Hacker, is just 99 cents at all online retailers. It's the perfect chance to begin the adventures of Theo Reese, high school student, hockey player, computer genius, and covert agent who goes by the codename Winger. The second thrilling installment, Schooled, is also available, and coming this fall, Audio Assault continues Theo's high-tech missions. Love Bites Reviews says Jeff Adams has a brilliant writing style for YA that draws you in. Add the Codename Winger series to your Pride Month reading list before the sales ends on June 30th. Get more information at codenamewinger.com.
So let's talk about some movies here to wrap up Pride Month. Shouldn't be a surprise to anybody that I got the Love, Simon DVD as soon as it came out. It's actually been out on digital since sometime back in late May. The Blu-ray and the DVD copies just dropped a couple weeks ago, and I'm super happy to now own this for my very own self. It's well known for those who listened to the podcast at all in middle March that I was gaga for this movie. We were both gaga for this movie.
It's really good.
We loved it a lot, saw it a couple times in the theaters. I have not actually watched the movie on Blu-ray just yet, but I have sampled the special features. Some delightful deleted scenes here. There's a large deleted scene from the film that takes place over Christmas, right after Simon gets outed. His friend Nick shows up to take him to a gay bar to show that everything really is okay. It has a delightful cameo from Colton Haynes, who, of course, is a part of the Berlanti universe because of his time on Arrow, which actually I think he came back this season even. It's really nice to see Simon kind of get out and get his groove on just a little bit, putting his toe out there. And some nice scenes with his parents when he comes back from this. I totally get why this scene was cut, because it changes the tenor around Christmas time in the movie a little bit, but it's nice to see it on the deleted scenes. Also some nice behind-the-scenes stuff while they were shooting. All the cast is involved in it. Becky Albertalli gets to speak a little bit about the movie because she got to be on set a lot since it's shot in her hometown of Atlanta. So yeah, the deleted scenes were great. The deleted and the bonus were great. And eventually I will also listen to the commentary because there's a commentary track from Greg Berlanti along with a couple of the writers. Did you enjoy our bonus scene watching and extra stuff watching?
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So check out Love, Simon, which is now available in pretty much all formats, it would seem. It is worth being in your movie collection, for sure. And I will probably talk about the movie again after I actually watch it on the DVD. Now, you got a couple of DVDs in the mail as well. Because, yeah, we're still old school. We actually buy DVDs periodically instead of just getting the digital download.
Mm-hmm.
What you got?
Really quickly, I want to talk about two older films. The first one is called Jack the Giant Killer. Not Jack the Giant Slayer, which came out in 2013 and is total garbage and unwatchable. I'm talking about Jack the Giant Killer. This came out in 1962. If you enjoyed The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, you will enjoy this movie because they are practically identical in every conceivable way. They both share the same leading man, Kerwin Matthews. They both share the same villain, played by Torrin Thatcher. They both share the same director, Nathan Warren. They are also almost identical in plot. Jack the Giant Killer is essentially a riff on the legend of Jack and the Beanstalk. Our hero, Jack, played by Kerwin Matthews, has to save a princess who's been kidnapped by said giant of the title. And it's a big deal. He's like transformed from a mere country stable boy into a hero. And their adventures continue from there. The story beats of Jack the Giant Killer, as I said, nearly match the Sinbad movie scene per scene. So that's an enjoyable comparison. This movie is a little bit more colorful, a little bit more children oriented, a lot cheaper. They tried their best with the special effects, but some of them end up looking remarkably chintzy. But anything would look chintzy compared to Ray Harryhausen. Let's just put that out there. It's not Jack the Giant Killer's fault that it's compared to a total classic. The reason I'm bringing this movie up is because Kerwin Matthews was in fact gay in real life. He was, in 1962, he was doing pretty well in Hollywood. He was kind of wrapping things up. The roles were getting fewer and farther between, so he ended up heading to Europe not too long after this and doing some movies over there. And he worked rather steadily until the 70s. He finished out his IMDb resume with like junky movies like Octoman and The Boy Who Cried Werewolf. He eventually retired, and he owned an antique store in the Bay Area. It's worth noting that Kerwin met the man who would become his lifetime partner around the time that he made Jack the Giant Killer. Oh. Not on the particular set of this movie, but it was around this time in the very early 60s that he met his, essentially his husband, and they were together until Kerwin's death in 2007.
Oh, that's cool.
Now, the Blu-ray of Jack the Giant Killer is, number one, really beautiful. It's remastered and it looks fantastic. But what makes it extra super special is that included as a bonus is the musical version of Jack the Giant Killer.
Oh my.
Now, for reasons no one is actually 100% sure of, after the release of Jack the Giant Killer was botched by some, behind the scenes junk that was no one's fault, really. It went into the editing room sometime in the 70s and had songs added to it by Moose Charlap. And to see this, it's really, I don't think there are words that can adequately convey how bizarre and totally cuckoo bananas it is to be watching, this perfectly respectable kids, adventure movie, and all of a sudden these strange, tortured musical numbers come up. In one scene between Jack and the princess, they're sailing to a faraway land, and they have like 2 or 3 lines of dialogue. It's maybe 15 or 18 seconds in the, actual film. But what they did is that they tortured this short footage. They ran it forwards and ramped it up and then slowed it down and ran it backwards so that Jack and the princess end up singing this love song together for 2 whole minutes.
Oh my.
It's such a really weird...
Folks, I haven't seen this, so I can't comment on the cuckoo-ness, but wow.
It's wonderful and really, really strange. If you're a fan of fantasy films or cult films, I highly recommend Jack the Giant Killer and giving it a try. It's on Blu-ray right now. And really quickly, I also want to mention another movie that I got on DVD, The Female Animal, and that came out in 1958. I've known about this movie for quite a while, but I finally took the plunge and I bought it, and I could not be happier. The Female Animal is about manly man George Nader, and he is an extra on a movie set, and one day there is an on-set accident, and he saves the leading lady, Hedy Lamarr. And in order to show her appreciation, Hedy invites George back to her beach house. And she kind of ends up pulling Norma Desmond. And she hires him to be the caretaker of her beach house. And then romance ensues. While the movie sort of tiptoes around the fact that this is a May, December, older woman gigolo kind of story. They never quite mention the age gap between the 2 stars. Hedy looks amazing, by the way. I'm not sure where this particular movie falls in her career, but she looks phenomenal. It's one of those movies when the female star might wake up in the morning and she rolls out of bed with her hair perfect and her makeup immaculate.
Oh.
I love those movies. And this is one of them. Anyway, so Hedy and George are, having a grand old time. Unfortunately, George ends up saving Jane Powell. He's
handy to have around, isn't he?
He's got a hero complex. Jane Powell is kind of drunk and her at a bar, a seaside bar, and her date is getting a little too handsy. So George, being the perfect gentleman that he is, saves her. She's too drunk to go home by herself, so he ends up taking her back to the beach house. Unbeknownst to him, Jane is actually Hedy's daughter.
Uh-oh.
And so the rest of the movie is him trying to romance the 2 of them and the drama that eventually ensues. Jane Powell, up to this point, had, pretty much, made her career playing cute good girls. So getting to watch her be a bad girl, and her character is basically drunk the first half of the movie. It's really, really wonderful. I loved it to pieces. It's worth noting that George was also gay, just like Kerwin Matthews. And remarkably, they kind of had the same career trajectory. Around the time that the female animal was made, George was a contract player at Universal. And George is, number one, remarkably good looking. He spends half of the movie with a shirt off for very, very good reason. He was tall, he was handsome, he had this lush head of dark hair. The only problem is that there were several tall, dark, and handsome leading men under contract at Universal at that particular time. The number one being, of course, Rock Hudson. So everyone else essentially got the choice roles, and George usually ended up getting the leftovers. Also, unfortunately, it was around this time that Confidential magazine had that gay story about Rock, and it was essentially George Nader who was thrown under the bus. They gave the story about George to the magazine in order to keep Rock's secret life secret. Which was fine. George and Rock were apparently very good friends in real life. Regular old friends. And he didn't really mind it at all. After the female animal, he ended up doing a lot of television work. And then, like Kerwin Matthews, he ended up going to Europe, doing a couple of spy movies, that kind of thing. After that, he suffered an eye injury, which made it uncomfortable to be under the bright studio lights. So George essentially retired in the 70s, around the same time that Kerwin Matthews did. George ended up writing the classic sci-fi tale Chrome. I've got I believe it's the mid-'80s reprint from Allison Books, holding up here on the video feed. Let me just read you the back of the jacket of Chrome. In the future, there will only be one taboo: to love a robot. But in the desert hideaway where Chrome and the warrior King Vortex meet, a bond between man and machine is unknowingly taking shape. A bond that will ignite intergalactic violence and bring Earth once more to the brink of total destruction. Hell yeah. So, thank you, George, for being a really good actor and for starring in wonderfully soapy movies like The Female Animal, and for also writing the gay sci-fi classic Chrome. Now, I know all of you listening probably have no real interest in Jack the Giant Killer or The Female Animal. I just thought it would be nice to bring up two lesser-known films from gay actors of yesteryear.
And not to mention the Crazy Town book. Yeah. But yeah, it's good for the end of Pride Month to call out these kind of things. Absolutely. So we'll shift over to books, and we're going to look at a couple of children's books. Before we dive into that, as we know, we've had the creators of Promised Land on the show previously. Their second book, Maiden Voyage, is coming out this week. It's due to drop on Tuesday the 26th. And we're excited to be getting our copy, hopefully sometime soon, because we helped back that Kickstarter. If you want to hear more about that, you could check out our interview with Adam Reynolds and Chaz Harris back at episode 109. Mm-hmm. And if you're into these kind of books, we highly recommend you grab your copy of Maiden Voyage. Now, you've got some groovy children's books to show us today that start off with one of our favorite things, The Prince. Princes and Knights.
Yeah. The first book we want to quickly talk about is Prince and Knight by Daniel Hack and Stevie Lewis. As you can tell by the title, it's about a lovely, handsome prince, and he is busy trying to find a compatible lady in order to serve beside him on the throne. But it ain't working. He's having a hard time. He's not really interested in the ladies that are paraded in front of him by his family. One day he was just, hanging out, roaming around his kingdom when they come under attack by a dragon. And he takes it upon himself to save the country he loves. Thankfully, he gets some help by a handsome knight who happens to be riding by. They defeat the dragon and essentially live happily ever after.
Yeah, I checked this book out too because it only takes about 5 minutes to read. The interior artwork, and you could tell what the artwork looks like from the cover there. But the interior is gorgeous. The story is adorable, and it just made me go, "Aw."
Yeah.
Oh, especially on top of the fact that we've been reading Prince and Knight tales of late with some of Lucy Lennox's books, and I just finished T.J. Klune's book with all the knights and the wizards and stuff. So that just fed right into that for me.
It warms your heart.
It does.
It's a really good book. We both highly recommend it. I also want to quickly mention Pride, the story of Harvey Milk and the Rainbow Flag. And once again, like our previous book, the title of this one also kind of tells the tale of what lies within its pages. It's wonderful. It's written by Rob Sanders and illustrated by Steven Salerno. It gives you some background biographical information on Harvey Milk. And sort of springboards off of his famous quote, "You have to give them hope." In the book, Harvey undertakes the mantle of gay savior, and he asks his friend Gilbert Baker to come up with a symbol of the LGBTQ movement, and they create the rainbow flag. So this is a wonderful little book, some great illustrations, and it's a really great way to introduce young children to some LGBTQ history.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's important. We talked last episode a little bit about the history and how important keeping the history is, and that is a nice book to actually do so.
Now, recently, while you were away in Texas, you had the chance to listen to a wonderful audiobook of a book that's remarkably popular and just about everyone else has read. Yeah. But you finally taken the plunge.
I've taken the plunge. I actually own a copy of it too, so I don't know, why I haven't read this sooner. Not Your Sidekick by C.B. Lee came out in 2016. Mm-hmm. Now, for those who haven't read it yet, or perhaps are more into audio, the audiobook with narration from Emily Wu Zeller just came out at the end of May. Mm-hmm. So I'm not that far behind, at least on the audiobook. And I have to say that Emily did a great job with this narration. This is the first in CB's Sidekick Squad series, of which a second book is out and a third is on its way. This takes place at a time that is a little bit out in the future, after some solar apocalypse happened and comets went by and all kinds of crazy stuff happened.
Comets, you say?
Comets and yeah, it's like, made me think a little bit of Night of the Comet a little bit, but not people don't disappear, but there is apocalypse, and part of the radiation that was left behind has made some people into metahumans, and some people have manifested superpowers. The government that is in place afterwards set up the essentially the League of the Heroes and the League of the Villains to kind of keep everybody, in place and make sure everybody gets their training and how to use their powers. And poor Jessica Tran does not seem to have any powers. Her parents are super. They have what are called C-class powers. So they're low-level superheroes, just keeping the peace in Andover. And they actually have C-level villains to deal with as well, with Master Mischief and Mistress Mischief. Everything's going along fine. Jess is upset that she's not going to get to fly, especially because her sister turned into an A-class hero. And her brother, who also has no powers, is just super smart. So he's kind of got his own lane of stuff that he's doing, leaving Jess to just kind of be Jess. She's got good friends, though, with Bells and Emma. And she's got this crush on the volleyball captain, Abby. She goes off and gets this internship to do something besides maybe work in a sandwich shop, and ends up working for the robot maker Monroe Industries, who makes all manner of helpful automated assistants, such as the vacuum cleaner that works in Jess's home, which is a little tweaked in the head. He's so cute. The vacuum just made me so happy, I have to say. In his little efforts to keep the house clean and do the right thing as his little robot self. But it turns out that this internship in the experimental division is under the mysterious M. And Jess soon finds out that might be Master Mischief, who's working for Monroe Industries. Turns out Abby works there too. And from here, I'm going to be a little obtuse on the plot because I can't tell you how wonderful it was that CB just kept turning all these corners that were like, no, what? It was completely awesome how this unfolded. There are nefarious things going on in the government and potentially in the superhero league itself to keep the populace a little docile and kind of controlled in the post-apocalyptic times they live in. The crush slash love slash romance that blooms for Jess and Abby unfolds so just perfectly, in my view. They start out working together. They do a school project together where they have to write something that turns into a little bit of a romance fiction piece between two girls who happen to be a little bit like the two of them. The superhero stuff is really epic as everybody kind of finds out they've got powers. They have the power within often, which is a great kind of trope, and the whole concept of not your sidekick really is, I think a lot of teenagers, kind of figure out kind of their place in the hierarchy. Are they the alpha, the beta, the sidekick in some terms? Are they the hero? And this is really a nice example of everybody getting to kind of write their own story and not necessarily following the hand they were dealt or what society is expecting that this person must do. Everything is handled so well. I like how CB creates her character. She's got such a diverse cast here. And really the surprises come every few pages. You just keep getting this new information and this new thing that totally took the story in ways that my brain just didn't even think of. And I love that. So I'll definitely be getting the second book. Hopefully the second book audio will be coming along soon. So I can catch up with that one. I believe it's called Not Your Villain, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm so happy that I finally got to read this and fall into the world of C.B. Lee. And if you are one of the potentially few who has not gone down this path yet, you definitely should, because Not Your Sidekick kicks butt.
Now, if any of the books we just mentioned sound good to you, all you have to do is go to the show notes page at Big Gay Fiction Podcast, and we've got links for everything we just mentioned. Anytime you use the affiliate links on the show notes page, we get a teeny tiny little kickback. A couple of pennies drop
more like that.
drop into the Big Gay Fiction coffers and help keep this show rolling. If you'd also like to support the show through Patreon, you can do that as well. All you have to do is go to patreon.com/biggayfictionpodcast, and we've got all the information you need to learn about supporting this show with a small or large, it's up to you, monthly pledge. Once again, that is patreon.com/biggayfictionpodcast.
Want to hang out with us between shows? Check us out on Facebook. You never know what we might post. News about book sales, bonus video content, and maybe even a live broadcast or two. Like us today at facebook.com/biggayfictionpodcast and see what we get up to next.
So every now and then we take a little divergent course from the interviews that we normally do here. And for Pride Month, one of us, and we're actually not sure which one it was anymore, decided that it would be super cool to interview somebody from Sacramento's Lavender Library. I love that we live in a place that has this kind of facility available. We've interviewed in the past the guys who run the bookstore that's inside the LGBT Center in New York. This interview follows the same vein because in this era where everything's kind of getting either jammed in the few remaining big box bookstores that are out there, or you have to kind of dig it out on Amazon, this is a place where you can go and browse LGBTQ books, which is really awesome to me that is available. So we went out there, we reached out, we found Trevor Neeley, who is on the board of the library and is also their internship coordinator, and he was kind enough to sit down with us on a Saturday afternoon and tell us all about this great place. So today we are at the Lavender Library here in Sacramento, We discovered this place right around the time that we moved here, and we're thrilled to see an LGBTQ collection right here in our backyard. And officially, this is called the Lavender Library Archives and Cultural Exchange. And it was founded almost 20 years ago now by 17 local Sacramento community members as a research and information institution for the city's LGBTQIA community. And I'm joined by Trevor Neeley, one of the library's board members and its intern coordinator. They've been working for the library since January 2016, when you told us you were the key pickup. You were
backup key holder.
Backup key holder.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Just for a few months, the backup key holder.
And then you became so much more. Then we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Trev, for taking some time out to talk to us about the library.
Oh yeah, thank you for being here.
So, in the broadest of terms, what is this library's mission for the community?
I think we have several missions, depending on which volunteer you ask. Maybe we are all volunteer run. I think. But I think our core mission is creating a space where people can meet each other, get to know one another, and also get to know their community, both in a regional sense and in a national sense, and maybe an international sense as well. In terms of exploring their identities, exploring their queer identities specifically. All of our materials are LGBTQ focused or written by LGBTQ authors or directors in the case of DVDs, of course. Or they incorporate the identities or experiences of queer folks. So I think it's a space, I got involved, I don't know if this is a question for later, but I got involved because my mission in this space is to provide a space for people to explore themselves and to potentially, for me, literature is what got me to come out to myself and then to others. It was the first thing that, helped me to make sense of my reality after at least 7 or 8 years in the closet, of knowing for sure that I was queer, but not telling anybody about it. So that's my main mission, is just to help keep the space open, being all volunteer run. We do have a pretty small group of dedicated volunteers who help keep the space open so that people can have a space to explore themselves and get to know their community a little bit through queer literature.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask what some of the books were that helped you?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Yeah. I mean, I came out in college in my senior year at UC Davis from taking an intro queer studies class through the women's studies minor that I was doing with my cultural history major. And some of the most influential works were written by Eve Sedgwick, Gloria Anzaldúa, Michael Warner, Monique Fatigue, various scholars that people would maybe point to as the founders of queer theory as a discipline. For me, it was about getting the academic theory background behind queer identity, I think. I've always been a read-write learner, so I think I really needed to read and write about my experience before I could fully come to grips with it and be honest with myself and others. So it was that in conjunction with getting involved at the LGBT Resource Center on campus at Davis. And just kind of exploring myself through literature primarily, I think, is what led me to being able to come out and get involved in queer community. So that's what my main goal, my mission here is to create a space where people can read about themselves.
Mm-hmm. What does it mean that the library is also an archive and cultural exchange?
Like I said, I mean, it's not just a place where you can come to read. I mean, we have people coming through here on a regular basis who aren't even necessarily members, so they don't have the ability to check materials out or circulating materials, but they still come here for events. They still come here to meet people. So many of my good friends are also volunteers here, whether we met before or we met, through the library since I started volunteering here. It's a cultural exchange because people are able to share of their cultural identity with one another and tell each other what that means to them and bond over that. I think once you understand a person's cultural background, then you can really connect. So I think that the cultural exchange part is definitely around our events, our support groups, our parties, just our getting together and being here and queer together still. And then also to develop resiliency with one another is really important. I think the library helps people to do that in community with others of like mind or of similar identities. And the archives definitely is an important part of our work. Many people who come to the library on a regular basis maybe don't even realize that we have an archive just a few blocks away here where we keep ephemera and historical objects, materials, papers. We keep personal papers of prominent community members. We have all sorts of interesting stuff in the archives, and the community is able to engage with it either by getting involved and contacting us and asking for an archives tour, or coming to events where we have on display materials from our archive, like the Sacramento Archives Crawl. Every October we participate in that, and we have a guest archivist curate the collection that they want to, in theme with the, I don't know if you've been to the Sac Archives Crawl, but it's an awesome event put on by the state archives, and we are always participating in that, and we, share a bit of our local queer history through actual engagement with the materials. So our archive is a great way to, I think, document our history in the Sacramento region. That's the main goal of the archive, I think.
So for those on the video, they could see this massive collection back here behind us. Mm-hmm. How does the library curate its collection?
That's a great question. Well, the influx of new volunteers has led to an influx of new board members, which has led to a series of projects, I think, to curate the collection in a meaningful way and in a strategic way in terms of space management. Part of that has been the creation of the collection development policy, which was recently ratified by the board. Our strategic plan, including our 5-year plan that was recently passed by the board after a lengthy process of doing strategic planning, guided by Temple Kirk from the Gender Health Center and one of our board members here. We're also currently working on drafting a collection development policy for our archive, so we can have more formalized processes for intake of items and maintenance of the archival space. So I would say it's curated in a strategic way, and then in the reality of the situation, which is that our space is limited, and our volunteer base is limited. But we in our weeding process, we're very careful. We don't weed out very many materials, and when we do, it's usually because it's not LGBT related in any manner. And it's just kind of kept up through the years of having a core of volunteers who really care about the accessibility of this literature, I think.
You've mentioned taking part in the Sacramento Archive Crawl. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What are some of the other events that the library is participating in to kind of get the word out about the library and to be kind of out in the community?
Well, we participate at the Sac State Pride often, at the Sierra College Rainbow Days, their version of Pride, the Davis Pride, the City of Davis Pride in Central Park in Davis, the Archives Crawl. I mean, we were at Earth Day this year. We were at the APIXI conference at Sac State, the Asian Pacific Islander queer conference that they hosted. I mean, most places we're invited. We pitch it to the board and we just say, if we're invited, do we want to participate or not? We were at the, I think it's called International Peace Day recently. We had some volunteers doing outreach there. Personally, I'm not at everything, so I don't have it. Maybe I should have had a list here. But we do. We have a lot of things we participate in. The Earth Day seemed like it was a lot of fun. We were glad to be. This year was our first time participating in outreach at Earth Day, and that was pretty cool. It was interesting to be at an event, I think, that wasn't completely like LGBTQ focused. Yeah. But certainly, queer folks care about the environment too. So I'm sure there were a lot of queer folks in attendance, even though it wasn't explicitly a queer event. We had a lot of fun there.
Yeah, very cool that you're invited to that, just to kind of get the word out to a slightly different.
And we've even had community organizations and events reach out to us and offer for partnership in terms of fundraising. I mean, we had the Shine Cafe in February. They do their every other week open mic event, and every month they pick a different nonprofit to sponsor and give the proceeds to. So I think the month of February was our month. We got the proceeds from the Shine Cafe open mic event. So shout outs to the Shine Cafe, good people over there, and that's a great way for us to do fundraising. We're a nonprofit, all volunteer run organization. It's really a community effort to keep the space open.
Mm-hmm. What events do you have here that are both book centric and perhaps community centric?
Yeah, we've had so many author release parties. When there's a book release going on, we have the Eclectic Trash Book Club that meets every other Thursday. That's actually met for longer than the library's been existing. It's a fiction mostly, I think, LGBT book club. We have a new book club called Ellipses, which is a radical queer and trans book club that I think focuses more on academic and non-fiction books. They meet every other Sunday. Tomorrow they'll be meeting. So yeah, every other Sunday we have ellipses. We have the Queer Authors Collective that has been meeting here and doing book readings as well. We have a new open mic series that's going to be starting, focused on queer people of color, mostly having a chance to share their comedy. We host the LGBTQ Latinx group here in town, the Sacramento LGBTQ Latinx Association, I think they're called. They're meeting here now. We have the Sacramento F to M support group that meets here, the bisexual support group that meets here. So we have a lot of ongoing, like, regular support groups that meet here, as well as some special events, like Dr. Gail Pittman from Sac City College does her book release parties here. We've had several local authors do book release parties, as well as we had our mural unveiling in March. We have a new mural on the wall, on our back wall here at the library, that we partnered with the California Endowment and the Gender Health Center to create. It's a beautiful mural. If you haven't had a chance to check it out,
I didn't know that was back there. We'll have to go look at that.
Yeah, it commemorates the life and death of China Gibson, and it brings, I think, highlights for the community the problem of anti-trans violence and specifically trans women of color, the violence that trans women of color disproportionately face in the contemporary United States. So it's meant to bring awareness to that, and also to celebrate the accomplishments of the Black Lives Matter movement. Who I personally, would stand in solidarity with this year in not attending Pride, and standing in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter Sacramento chapter, as well as the Tubman House and the Gender Health Center and other organizations, and by also. I think there's actually a lot of organizations that are standing in solidarity and maybe saying, Pride hasn't been representative of them in recent years, so they won't be participating this year. Mm-hmm. But calling for hopefully future collaborations in which we can have LGBTQ spaces and community centers that really do center marginalized voices and the voices of people of color and trans people in particular.
As these kind of issues come up, certainly trans issues and persons of color in the community issues have risen up quite a lot over the last couple of years. How does the library work to evolve itself to address those?
I mean, it's an intentional effort, I think, every day, every board meeting, making that an important piece of the meeting and talking about what are we doing to intentionally include more people and to think about the ways that the spaces historically maybe disproportionately served lesbians and gays and white people, and how we can be more strategic with who our audience is. We're trying to expand our social media presence as much as possible. Our social media presence on Facebook and Instagram has expanded dramatically, but not so much on Twitter, but we're working on that as well. And trying to invite speakers of color and trying to invite trans folks to lead events or to participate in events. It's definitely, it depends who you ask, I would say. But taking intentional steps and making it like an everyday thing to think about inclusion in your space. It can be things, I think, as symbolic or as simple as putting a sign on your bathroom that says it's an gender inclusive restroom. I mean, it's a single occupancy restroom, but it certainly wouldn't need to be gendered. And it certainly doesn't need to say, that it's for men and women, because we know that there are people who are not men or women. So I think small symbolic acts and then larger acts of it, purchasing of materials that are inclusive or of different identities. Authors, we recently got the Pinkerton grant again, the local Pinkerton grant for book purchasing. And with both of our last two Pinkerton grants, I believe we specifically purchased about $750 worth of books. I think pretty much all books, maybe some DVDs, by authors of color. So trying to expand the inclusion in terms of the materials on the shelf, I think, is primary for the board, as well as doing intentional efforts to expand the inclusivity of our events and support groups and things like that. Mm-hmm. But it's an ongoing effort, and it will be.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because like you said, it's a day-by-day kind of...
Yeah, you never really get to a point where, okay, now we've reached equity. Or now we've reached, diversity, and, exactly. The community's always changing.
Why is this library important to the LGBTQI community of Sacramento, but also the city itself?
I mean, I don't know. I can't really necessarily speak for the city.
Speak for the entire city.
For me, it's just important to have a space that's free of corporate sponsorship. It's great to have a space that is truly radically free. I think where you can come together to explore radical ideas, or the radical ideas within yourself, or the radical notion that you can resist the system yourself in a space here just by creating art, or meeting someone new, or attending a new event, or feeling empowered enough to host your own event, or feeling empowered enough to speak up at the open mic and share your artistry, or to do a book reading from your latest work. I think for me, the importance is just creating a space that's truly, I think, as much as possible free of corporate influence, and especially in the kind of late stage capitalism that we're currently in, I would say. Yeah.
How do you define radical when you use that term?
I would define radical as in against the status quo, or not normative in nature, or not unorthodox, I suppose.
Cool. Back to the books, because it's always back to the books.
Yes.
What are some of the more popular books here? What are the things that people kind of
It's
trend
interesting.
towards?
We have a lot of community members who will just take out a whole section of a shelf at a time, and they just kind of work their way through the alphabet and
That's
read all the
awesome.
fiction. I mean, when can you get enough fiction, right? I definitely sometimes just love coming in here and spending the Saturday just reading a new book. But I would say, the academic stuff in the nonfiction section is actually surprisingly popular. Certainly, the erotic DVDs is our most popular in terms of the number of items circulating quickly. We have, what would be the most popular texts, I wonder? The new children's section has been a huge success. We just developed a children's section in the last, I think, about a year ago, and it's been seeing really high rates of circulation. Our young adult section and our new book section, I think, has had high rates of circulation, which shows that the community is wanting new materials that maybe better reflect their experiences and identities. So yeah, the overflow book sale is popular, pretty much always, because it allows for people to engage with the literature without having to necessarily pay the membership dues, or just to not have to think about when you're going to return your book or call in and renew it. So the overflow book sale is popular. The erotic novels are pretty popular. Yeah,
the overflow book sale it's hard to get books for $1 or $2, and you just get to have them.
Yeah, and you just expand your own personal collection a little bit.
And you mentioned coming in on a Saturday and just reading a book. What do you like to read?
Oh, I have read a lot more nonfiction and academic, historical monographs than anything. Having done, history grad school, you just have to read a lot of nonfiction, a lot of monographs. But I enjoy novels. Since finishing my master's in 2014, I've been reading a lot more fiction, I would say. So that's been good. I enjoy just grabbing a random novel off the shelf and just kind of exploring that world a little bit. But my all-time favorites are definitely in the nonfiction section. Tend to be historians, tend to be microhistory. That tends to be where I go. Although lately I've been exploring the YA section. That's a lot of fun too. So yeah.
What's the best part for you in terms of the role that you play here?
Oh, my favorite part is just working my 12 to 3 on Saturdays shift. Just running the circ desk and making sure everyone's tended to and that people are able to check out their materials and reading. I first got involved here because I just wanted to prioritize reading more fiction after grad school. So exploring a new novel and meeting new people definitely has been my favorite part. I mean, half the people I go to brunch with on the weekends are volunteers at the library, so the social aspect is big too, I think. Met a lot of great people here.
You say you walked in the door because you were looking to read more fiction after grad school. When you did that, did you think it would go as far as it did, to that you're a volunteer, that you're on the board, that you're the intern coordinator? Did that just kind of evolve organically?
I think, just by necessity, they I did not think I would become the secretary and the intern coordinator and the Saturday key holder But we just have a small core group of volunteers, and when something needs to get done, we have a good group of people who step up and get it done. So, yeah, I didn't see all this coming. I'm not sure how long I'll be on the board necessarily, but I hope to continue my Saturday volunteer shift for the foreseeable. I told my roommate, as long as I live in Sacramento, I'll probably volunteer at the Lavender Library. So it's for the foreseeable, for sure. But the other stuff is good too. Getting the experience of continuing to lecture in the community on behalf of the library, to share not only what we do, but also some of our history. For the heteros out there who maybe don't know it, but also for queer folks who maybe want to connect more with their history, but didn't have a chance within their common core curriculum to learn queer history.
Sure.
I mean, I certainly didn't learn queer history until almost grad school, or probably upper division undergraduate. And even then, survey history courses at the college level don't exactly prioritize LGBTQ experiences.
What kind of lectures does the library go out and give? Because I know you go out and you give lectures. We talked to the president of the board, who's sitting way over behind us at the circulation desk.
Running the circ desk.
He goes out and is also doing lectures. What kind of programming does that put out into the community?
I mean, first and foremost, we want to share that we're here, we're queer, and that there's a space for those in the audience who maybe don't know it. I know for me, I drove by a lot or walked by and never came into this space for years. I just knew the library existed, but I didn't always, I didn't walk in until two and a half years ago. So first and foremost, we talk a little bit about, what is the library? Where are we? What do we do? But then we usually go into kind of a nonlinear look at the 20th century and some of like the identity formation and like how gay and lesbian and homosexual and where these words come from and how they came to be. And specifically in the United States, we tend to focus. Chris and I kind of worked, mostly Chris, worked on developing a kind of standard LGBTQ history lecture. And I think we're both Americanists, so it's pretty much all U.S. specific. But it focuses on resistance, identity formation, community formation. We try to kind of jump around in terms of space and time a bit to disrupt any notions of like linear progress models that tend to flood historiography a little too much. So yeah, it's an engaging. I try to make it an engaging lecture as much as possible, and not just a lit review. But when you're given, a lot of the organizations in the community who want us to speak will be like, "Oh, you got 45 minutes, to give us a history of LGBTQ people in America." So it's like, oh, okay, so everything from my entire master's thesis, into 45 minutes. Like, let's do it. So I think as historians often have to curate. I mean, that's kind of the fundamental tenet of postmodernism, I think, in the history discipline, is that everything's curated, right? And there's not necessarily any one universal truth. So it's always going to be kind of what the lecturer wants to convey, or what message they want to get across, or what they want to convince the people of. For me, that's most often making sure that we can destabilize any linear progress models in terms of like thinking about progress as though this is where we've achieved it, and making sure people realize that like you might be able to point to one thing at one point in time and say, in that space and time, that's progress. But is progress happening? Is it inevitable, and is it always happening, and does it end? These are important questions that I would like my students to engage with.
Mm-hmm. This is the 20th anniversary year. What's going to happen to help celebrate the library at this great milestone?
Well, we're hoping to get continue the positive community response that we've gotten. A big day of giving, we got a massive community response and exceeded our goal by over $1,000 of fundraising. With the mural release party in March, we saw huge attendance that we didn't necessarily expect. And more of our support groups are more full every day. So we're hoping to get good attendance this fall at the commemorative events, probably 2 events to commemorate our 20-year anniversary. This fall, we're going to be hosting like a barbecue crafternoon type event here at the space and in our parking lot. And then potentially on the same day or the day before, we're going to do we're currently looking into doing like at a bar, like renting the space of a bar and having more of a party in terms of drinking. We wanted to have like a sober event, of course, to be all ages and inclusive of folks who maybe, don't participate in drinking or in those types of environments. And then we also want to have like another event at the bar in recognition that, a lot of queer community has been found in drinking spaces.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of good historical literature on it too. A lot of queer folks have met and congregated in bars. So we're keeping that tradition alive as well with a celebration in the fall. Yeah, to commemorate our 20-year anniversary, both a sober, family-oriented event and maybe a nighttime party at the bar. And that's probably going to be all in October. And folks can follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We're just at SacLace on all of our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So folks can follow us on there as well as lavenderlibrary.com, our website, to learn more about that as things progress, because we're in the beginning stages right now. And if anyone out there who's been involved with the library, who wants to get involved, or who wants to get involved with the library, wants to get involved with planning the 20th anniversary, we're open to it. It's gonna take a village, but it's gonna be a party. We're looking forward to it.
Fantastic. Well, Trev, thanks so much for hanging out with us. Tell us about the library and everything.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you once again to Trevor for taking a few minutes out of his day to kind of take us on a tour and explain all the good things that Lavender Library does. If you'd like more information on the Lavender Library and some of their upcoming events, all you have to do is go to lavenderlibrary.com.
Yes. And if you want to head over to the YouTube, if you're not watching on YouTube as you intake our podcast this week, if you go out past the end of the show to the last 8 minutes of the video, you can actually go on a tour of the library, because Trevor took us around to show us all the various things that are in the library. So we appreciate that as well.
Okay, I think that'll do it for this week's episode. Coming up next week in episode 143, Brandolyn has some book recommendations. It's always lovely to have Brandolyn here.
Absolutely.
And also, we will recap our 2018 Jeff's Birthday New York City Theater Extravaganza.
Yes, that is where we've been the last few days, and we will be recapping that. I think as we stand here before we leave on that trip, we're seeing at least 7 shows, and probably 8, and maybe 9. So we will have all the scoop on that next week.
Yes. Guys, remember, no matter where life takes you, the journey will always be sweeter when you have a book. Until next time, everyone, please keep turning those pages and keep reading.
For detailed show notes and the complete episode backlist, go to biggayfictionpodcast.com. New episodes are available every Monday on all major podcast distributors and YouTube. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
So, Trev, show us around the Lavender Library
Oh,
to give people an idea of what we've been talking about.
absolutely. Yeah. So here we are in the entryway of the Lavender Library. We've got our kind of community resources area here where we keep various flyers and things for upcoming events and support groups as well. Not just the events and support groups that take place here in the library, but also some external events and some of our community partners, like the Gender Health Center and the Hmong Queer Schwab group and other groups in the community. We've also got a community resources area here behind you, where we're always giving away, free condoms and other materials that people might need, film festival schedules, support services as far as mental health providers and things like that. And then we have periodicals like our local Outward, of course, here in our front area. We have our Books for Prisoners box there that we, part of our Prisoner Solidarity Network, is having a project to collect books to donate to prisoners. And then all throughout this front area, you have our overflow book sale. Actually, anytime we're open, we have the ongoing overflow book sale here for suggested donations of $1 and $2. So quite a bit of materials here.
We love the overflow book sale.
Yeah. Yeah, whenever you see books outside the door, in the front, on the street side here, and then books all in this area, this is all just things we have duplicate copies of.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have, space is always an issue when you're a all volunteer-run nonprofit organization, and also when you're a library. And we're both, of course. So space is an issue, so we don't keep a lot of duplicates unless it's a really noteworthy material. So we mostly put duplicates here in the overflow book sale, and then we also do parking lot book sales every few months as well, which we have one coming up. Well, probably by the time this airs, though, it probably won't be coming up anymore. But next weekend, the first weekend of June, we're going to be doing an overflow book sale in the parking lot here. But the book sale is always ongoing here in the front area. And then everything, back here is more traditional library stuff, so we can definitely take a look at all of that too. Here we have the information desk or circulation desk where community members who are members of the library can check out materials, or non-members can ask questions about the neighborhood, or purchase books from the overflow book sale. We have usually our calendar up here, as well as other support group flyers. We host the national chapter, the Sacramento chapter of the national support group AMBI, which is a bisexual support group for bisexuals and their loved ones, I believe. We also host an F2M group, Queer Crafternoons on Sundays. So we can talk more about all of the different events and support groups that we host. But this is a great place to get the information on all that. And then here we have our special collections. So much of the materials here in the special collection are rare, first edition type of stuff. A lot of really older materials, like stuff even dating back to the 1880s, I think is some of our oldest stuff. So, of course, like most libraries, this whole section is not in circulation. Nothing in this section would be in circulation, but it's for in-library research purposes for the most part. I mean, we even have some first edition, like Anne Bannon's and Mary Jane Meeker's, and like pulp fiction novels that in the 1950s were selling millions of copies. So it's a pretty cool area here in the special collections. We just ask that people, maybe put on gloves for certain materials, for handling of certain materials.
Sure, yeah.
And then follow us back here. From here at the 8 on the wall, all the way going back, we have our materials in circulation. So everything here, we have our non-erotic DVDs, or just our DVD section here, in circulation to members. And then everything back here is in circulation to members as well. So we have our large fiction section, which goes from here all the way back. This is all fiction here. Most of our materials are actually donated by community members. So it has tended to skew gay and lesbian, but we are trying to expand the bisexual and transgender and other queer materials as much as possible, especially in recent years with grant funding and things like that. And then here we have our 2 aisles of nonfiction. Our classification system here is like a kind of loosely based off the Dewey Decimal System, but of course more identity-based to suit the needs of our community members, of course, because we are an explicitly LGBTQ library, and all materials in the library incorporate the identities or experiences of LGBTQ folks in some way. If it's too straight, we just kind of send it away. We reroute it out. We donate it to, the Goodwill, or to a women's resource center if it's feminist in nature, but maybe not LGBTQ, which, of course, can be dependent upon what the decisions of our library administrative committee are, because, for some folks, you'd say if it's feminist, it's also queer, by default. So it kind of depends on your perspective, but it does have to be written by a queer author or incorporate in some manner like the identities and experiences of queer folks to stay in our library. So that's the books in holding here. Back here we have our one of our most popular sections of the library. We have the erotic DVDs back there that are in circulation to members who are 18 and older only. And then we have on the wall here, this is our periodicals wall. We have quite a bit of periodicals in our holdings here. None of the periodicals are in circulation. They're just for in-library research. We have things ranging from nationwide periodicals to more local stuff. Like we have, I think, pretty much the whole series of Mom Guess What. We also have pretty much the whole series of Out Magazine and The Advocate, as well as smaller publications. And we've got quite a bit of Curve. We've got just a whole lot of periodicals, really. And then over here we have the newest section of the library. Just here, we have the children's section of the library. We just got a donation of toys and stuffed animals, which we're going to be putting here in this section. We also got a grant from the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence in San Francisco to do a multi-part queer drag queen story time. So we did the first one of those in March. We're going to do 2 more, I think 2 or 3 more coming up for drag queen story time. And that really is featuring our new children's section, which has been very popular. Actually, I think about half the materials in the children's section are checked out currently. We also have our young adult section right there next to the children's section. And then here on the wall, we have our new books and magazines, books mostly, actually. So this would be things that are like brand new, that board members have requested that we purchase, or that authors have left because they've done a reading, or we have several local authors who have like done their book release parties here at the library. Like, for example, Dr. Gail Pittman from Sac City College has done her book release parties here for, like, this book, for example, When You Look Out the Window. As well as recently we had Donovan James come through and share, I think, last week or the week before, come through and share his work. And it's pretty regular here. We have authors do book release parties here, just to kind of talk about their book and share the book with the community. We had Dr. Stoner from Sac State come in and do a book reading recently from his Cobra Killer novel. So lots of good stuff here in the library. The only things I think I didn't mention is we have the staff room back there, and we have a gender-inclusive restroom as well back there that's open to the community.
Fantastic.
That's kind of the whole tour, I think.
Awesome. Thanks for showing us around.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.